Just double check. So recording has started. And you can see this big behemoth on the screen. This be a Boletti, or in English, a penny bun, a porcino, or porcini. It's a Basidiomycete mushroom, a Boletus. But we're watching one of our favorite YouTubers. He's over in Thailand, and he's showing this giant Boletus, the size of his head. And so I went looking, and eventually I did find it. It's interesting because the same Boletus, a variant Grandidulus, it was a little easier to find because this particular type of Boletus is orange. The flesh is closer to an orange than a white. There's a cream and a yellow in between. What's interesting here is this giant mushroom also happens to be related to the porcini. It's a choice edible. It grows all around the world. But as I said, look at all the different Boletus. I had a hard time finding the particular one because there she be. She's really only referenced as being in California. And if you do look up this particular variant, the grandiose one, you'll see that it mainly mentions California. But as you see here, right, there's the white King Boletti. So that's not it, right, because she's a little bit different. And then we looked at the albobrunescens. That's Thailand, but it's not the right one. So it was really quite interesting to be able to go down this deep dark hole. But why do I mention it? Because it's interesting. We're all obsessed about these different mushrooms, but we forget truly what a mushroom is. Mushroom, as you see here, is the fruiting body of mycelium. Mycelium being the living organism. This is the mushroom, the fruiting body. What we normally would eat would be tantamount to an apple, and the mycelium, the tree. And I've even made a joke, at least I entertain myself, that it's tantamount to calling all pears, all tree fruit, pears and oranges, and any fruit from a tree, calling it all an apple. Kind of like calling them all mushrooms. I mean, being a little, or just tree fruit, I guess would be a better example. If you called it all tree fruit, not being very specific. But the real interesting is looking up not just this King Boletus, but looking at actual the life cycle of mushrooms. So this is a shiitake, again a choice edible, and some medicinal benefits. The porcini has what's considered some medicinal benefits, but we're going to look at a couple things here. So here's a spore print, right? The underside of a mushroom, you have your gills, right? Same as in this particular, right? In a shiitake, you see that the gills, those are those lines under the cap. The cap's the top. The gills are what hold the spores. The spores, when you look them up, you can see, right? Oh, this is just using a microscope, but he used it to look up all these different spores. So they just look like a powder. Most of them are microscopic, but they can have different shapes like this. So this, think of it kind of like the seeds of the mycelium, but really it's kind of like a little living creature more so. And then that, we've looked, that becomes a little spore print. And then what sometimes we do, like they showed in Mark Wien's video, they'll go and make a mushroom liquid culture so they can inoculate whatever the mushroom likes to live on. This Boleta mushroom grows on the ground, so obviously it likes humus, decomposing plant matter. The shiitake likes to grow on wood. So what I found interesting is we really don't learn some of this stuff, and I really love this particular gentleman, Lab Lulls, and he showed the oyster mushroom. Really beautiful. There's, like I said, the fruiting body of the mushroom. That's the fruit, kind of like the apple on a tree. So Lulls is pretending mycelium, or presenting, sorry, mycelium wandering. I'd love to share this because an old man like me, when I mention ryeberry, I just get weird looks because no one knows what I'm talking about. It's absolutely perfect. The other little thing that I saw that was great with this guy's tip. So back in the day, before these really fancy mushroom bags, we used to drill. So there's your little inoculation point, and then you want a breathing point, right? And then, yes, he's hammering it down so it doesn't cut. He's going to put a one-way material so that the mycelium can breathe, but you don't get any bacteria or mold coming in. And it's funny here, I would use something like Typar, house wrap, but he's just using denim, and yet he's incredibly successful. So instead of using silicone to create a self-healing inoculation point in one of those holes and covering the other hole with, like I said, a Type R or sometimes a 3M micropore tape is used because it's trying to keep debris and mold and mildew out. And usually the micrometer reading of these materials are so tight that nothing can get in. And I guess this guy is showing us that you can get away with it with something as simple as denim. So here he's rinsing his ryeberry. You want to soak them. Now he's going to add some calcium carbonate. You can get it at any brewer supply. That's just an anti-caking agent, right? It's stirred in. It will buffer the acidity a bit, but I don't remember him testing his pH. But mainly it's an anti-cake like the gypsum, right? You add the two. I mean, the calcium doesn't hurt at all. I mean, I never bothered with it myself. But again, you're going to see why he uses it. So what you're going to do is you're going to put your ryeberry into these mason jars, and you're going to inoculate, right? Packed loosely, right? Because you want to leave room for the mycelium to grow, and it's going to take room because you're going to see this. Next step, after you've put your soaked ryeberry into your jars, prepped your jars, now you're going to sterilize the jars. And we used to do it with a pressure cooker. Yeah, he says autoclave, but that's pretty much what you're doing. You want a certain poundage for a certain length of time. Usually what they do is just do it on full blast for 15 minutes, and usually you really get there, right? Hold on here. And so he pressure cooks those before he inoculates them. Now this is interesting as well. As I mentioned, you can use your spores to inoculate. You can even use a piece of the fruiting body of a mushroom. You can use just a piece of the cap that has some of the spores. You can use just some of the spores that you saw on the table. You can use a spore print. You can use some from a spore print. You can just scrape some of the spore print off. I have a spore print handy, but I won't bother showing you what I mean. You can see in the picture here, you can actually see below where it says Sharondale Mushroom Farm. That's essentially a spore print, but it's also, I think, designed to denote the mycelium, because as it grows, it is essentially kind of like this fibrous thread type growth. But what he has here are oyster plugs. Oysters are amazing. They can grow on just about anything, and that's what he's about to show us. So these here are wood plugs. They're designed for you to take a log, drill a hole, put the wood plugs in, and then that inoculates the tree. Kind of like what I showed you here. Okay, so he would take those plugs and inoculate this tree, and that tree would begin to grow that type of mushroom, mycelium. But what he's actually going to do is show us how versatile mycelium can be. So he did what I mentioned. So you can take one of these plugs, you can take your spore, you can take a spore print, you can grow your mycelium in a petri jar with spores or a piece of the fruiting body. So this is what I mentioned. This is why he uses his gypsum, because he let it go so long. Don't let it go this long, because now you have a mass of mycelium, and sometimes it actually cause some issues. You want it to get to, so you're going to see here, see how he pulls out a chunk, right? And see how solid those chunks are. Okay, hold on, I'll go back and show you what I mean here. Yeah, see, it says they can also be inoculated with an older jar. I actually highly recommend you do that. So start by autoclaving everything, as he says, pressure cook everything, because you're going to do this in a clean, like get a bin, a big plastic bin. You're going to do it in the clean bin. You're going to do what he's doing here over and over again. So you're going to start with even one jar. You inoculate it like you saw earlier. You let it grow, but not to quite to this point. What I would recommend you let it grow to is, let's see, there was a nice close-up picture here. Alright, so you're going to let it inoculate the one jar, but not that much. See how there's a giant layer of just mycelium on the top? You're going to let it grow to about... Why would you do that? You want people to see what you're doing, right? Dude, just cover it all up, eh? Why not? Yeah. See, look at him cover it up. So here, watch me. I'll try to zoom in here. Oops. No, it doesn't do a very good job, does it? But you see how the individual grains of the rye berry are loose. I mean, that was the whole idea of adding the gypsum, anti-caking agent. You wanted it to stay loose, because what you're going to do as it grows, if you inoculate it from the top, it's going to grow down into the jar. So often you want to shake it, because again, you don't want it to cake, because then you have that mess at the top. You have a ton of mycelium at the top, and then maybe the bottom doesn't get done. You want it all to inoculate evenly. Shaking it helps keep them loose, but also allows the mycelium to grow all the way around the rye berry. Then what you'll do is you'll take that one jar, and you'll put even less than what he did in those jars. Just put a few berries in each jar. You can take one jar, make dozens, let them all inoculate completely to this mycelium. Boom. And you end up with an endless supply of mycelium, which will give you an endless supply of fruiting bodies. So I found this quite interesting. In fact, we'll go one step further. So what he does is he must be in a very cool environment, because I haven't seen someone go to this extreme where it's the black garbage bags and he puts a piece of glass over and then the plastic. I can understand the glass, he wants to keep it clean and such, but so there's your mycelium growing. It's absolutely beautiful. Like I said, go give this guy a follow. He did an excellent job on this because he shows us the rye berries. So again, right there, that's what I was looking for. What you want, don't let it go so far as this mycelium up here all caked and gross and thick. That is cool, but it's extreme, right? He forgot about it for probably an extra couple weeks. This should only take you a couple weeks, and you shake it every day. Just make sure it stays in an 80-ish temperature. You want it warm but not hot, and a cool dark place. But you know how they say that, just something good and steady, not so cold that it puts the mycelium to sleep, not so warm that it cooks it or produces an environment that's more akin to bacteria and such, right? You want it right in that range. The reason why I'm not giving you a specific range is because it depends on what you're growing. Like I said earlier, we're not talking about the fruiting bodies of the mushrooms. We're talking about what the mycelium needs to be healthy, happy, and continue to produce the fruit. So, as I said, you want to take it to about this point where the rye berries are coated in the mycelium, but they're still loose. That's the shaking every day will give you that action. But as I said, I love rye berries. I've loved them for a long time. They're kind of hard to find. There's other ways you can use brown rice flour. This guy here went so crazy, and he's used a bunch of substrates to see what would work. He used kitchen scraps, yard clippings, coffee grounds, and even shredded paper. I'll just say pretty much everything eventually did kind of work out, but coffee grounds is really the one that worked out the best. Yard clippings we're really not too surprised by. The difference is it you would not usually waste your time because you would assume yard clippings would be contaminated. But yeah, I just wanted to share how this works. Mushrooms are the fruit. We grow mycelium to produce the fruiting bodies that is mushrooms. As you can see there, there's the lawn clippings. The white is the mycelium. There you can see that fibrous thread-like growth. And finally, the coffee grounds, which surprised me the most, is how successful this was. But again, oyster mushrooms are gangster. They'll grow on just about anything. And when we're talking about, say, purple spores, your psilocybin mushrooms, they're a little more finicky on what they like to grow on. But again, once you get some of these basic principles, there's some contamination. Get rid of that. You don't want that. And that's what you're going to see more often in more temperamental mushrooms. But as you can see, he just went and got extra coffee grounds from his coffee shops. Some guys use it for the garden and other uses. Who would have thought you can grow mushrooms? But I thought I'd just share the life cycle of the mushroom and a little bit of tips and tricks from an old guy. So yeah, hope you all have a great day.